morning, everybody. My name is Doran Schrantz. I'm the executive director of Isaiah. Isaiah is a faith-based community organizing organization with member congregations all over the state of Minnesota, working together for racial and economic justice. So we are here today because there is an urgent need in Minnesota for paid family leave. That need is felt all across the state. All the organizations represented in this room talk to thousands of Minnesotans all across the state. And what we are learning is that everybody has a story about paid family leave, or either having it or not having it. And as we talk to people, we are learning that everyone gets sick. Everyone has to take care of a grandparent or a parent. Lots of people have children or adopt. This is something that cuts across geography and race and class. All kinds of workers need access to paid family leave. So we think it's important to actually start with our stories. So when I think about why we need paid family leave, 4 people come to my mind. My dad, who died 2 years ago of Alzheimer's and lymphoma, who was able to stay home with my mother to be cared for. He lived probably 3 or 4 years longer than he otherwise would have because he was able to be at home. My sister, who has a long-term chronic disability, who has spent over the last 15 years, probably 2 of those years in hospitalization stays. My 2 daughters, who are now 11 and 9, Clara and Alice, I was able to stay with them for 3 months each to bring them into our family and into this world and to care for them and love them. We all have these moments where we're able to hold somebody's hand or hold our child or sit at the bedside of somebody that we love. These are not just burdens in our life. These are some of the most important things and moments about being a human being on this planet. And everybody should be able to love and care for the people in their families, no matter what. So that is why we are introducing a proposal to make sure that every worker in the state of Minnesota has access to paid family leave. So here is, we have a Minnesota for Paid Family Leave Coalition that stands here today, and our partners and champions in the state legislature to make sure that this conversation really unfolds in this legislative session and across our state. We do have a short policy overview. There'll be questions after there are a few speakers about the policy, but the headline is, this is an act that creates an insurance program providing Minnesota workers with up to 12 weeks of partial wage replacement during pregnancy and medical leave, and 12 weeks during family leave. 80% to 55% of wages based on income would be replaced up to a maximum of the average weekly wage, or around $1,000 per week. The most important part of what we're proposing today is that everybody will contribute and everybody will benefit. So, our Paid Family Leave, Minnesotans for Paid Family Leave Coalition, the steering committee is Isaiah, the AFL-CIO, Children's Defense Fund, AARP, MAPE, Take Action Minnesota, and Gender Justice. And our chief authors are, I'm so excited they're standing here with us today, Representative Metzger, Representative Flanagan in the House, and Senator Sieben in the Senate. And I also want to acknowledge all the other legislators who are here with us today, Senators Pappas, Senator Franzen, and friend, Senator Clausen, Senator Dahl, Senator Hayden, Senator Herr, and Senator Johnson, and also, of course, Representative Rena Moran. So we are going to hear first from a small business owner working with Main Street Alliance, to talk about this from a small business perspective, and then we will hear from our chief authors and then take questions. So Todd. My name? Doran Schrantz. DORANSCHRANTZ.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here this morning. I'm Todd Mickelson, and I own a small business called the RM Group, and I'm here from Orono, Minnesota, out by Lake Minnetonka area. The spelling of my name is Todd, M as in Mary, Ikkelson. And I guess I'm coming at this from both angles, employer and employee, back 12 or 13 years ago when my wife and I were trying to get our small business off the ground. We also had a brand new baby girl. And although we were struggling financially, we both recognized the benefit that we had in being able to spend time with our new baby. At least one of us could be there to be her parent, a luxury many working families do not have, and a luxury that we never take for granted. Keeping that in mind, the daunting prospect of running a new small business and being able to offer that type of thing to an employee or employees, you start to realize that you may not be able to afford to treat your employees the way that you really think they should be treated. Small businesses have a daunting prospect when it comes to employing people. When we find an employee, we can't afford to lose that employee. Therefore, we can't afford to not treat that employee well. We can't afford to not pay that employee well. I own a very small business. I built it around an invention of mine. My wife and I run the business, and we have one employee. And he's, of course, very essential to our operations. And if he had to take time off for medical or family reasons, we couldn't afford to lose him, but we also couldn't afford to pay him for his time off. So we'd try and make it work, of course, but it would be very difficult, and this is, in fact, the plight of many truly small businesses. That's why I support this bill, because it includes funding that will allow businesses like mine to be able to afford paid time off. With the affordable payroll insurance pool to help us afford pay for family leave, we'd be able to offer family leave, and therefore we'd be able to compete for the best employees for our small business. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Senator Katie Sieben from Cottage Grove, and it's K-A-T-I-E-S-I-E-B-E-N. Women in Minnesota are workers. We have one of the highest labor force participation rates for women in the country. At the same time, our state workforce is aging. For our state's future prosperity and growth, we need the participation of women in the workforce. Our current lack of a paid family leave program reflects a time, decades ago, when the majority of women did not fully participate in the workforce. A paid family leave program in Minnesota will ensure that workers have some degree of security when a major life event occurs. My 3 children were all born when I was a sitting legislator. I returned to work within days of my daughter Greta's birth. My paycheck continued, and ultimately it was my choice to return to work so quickly. But I remember and understand the acute need a mother feels to bond with a new baby. This is not something that should be up for debate. Families need time together when a major life event occurs, and we as policymakers need to find a way to make this happen. It seems to me this is the most basic family value, and I'm proud to be the chief author of the bill in the Minnesota Senate. I'm hopeful we can pass this proposal this session, and I'd like to thank my legislative colleagues, as Doran mentioned, for being here with me to show their support for this. And I'd also like to especially welcome Senator Franzen's son, Philip, to the conference today.
Hi, my name is Jason Metzger. I am from Virginia, Jasonmetsa to follow suit. Thank you all, first and foremost, for coming today to cover this very important issue for Minnesota. And I'm here as a legislator, but what I'm really here for is as a grandson who was able to spend time with his grandfather in the hospital during the last few months of his life. And I've just got a quick story to share because that's what everyone I think around the state has, is a story of how this would impact them. My grandfather became ill, and we knew that he was at the end of his life. And it was a very touching time to have with him. We are in a small rural hospital up in Cook, Minnesota, and I lived there with him for about a month. But one night things took a turn for the worse. He had a DNR and his health was deteriorating pretty rapidly. And the machine in the room was letting the nursing staff and stuff know, so we went in and were able to ask him, what do you want? And he said, can you crawl into bed with me and rub my hair? So I crawled into bed with my grandfather and I rubbed his hair, and the beeping from the machines quit, and all we heard was a steady tone. And got up, went out into the room, and we called the rest of my family. And about a minute and a half later, I heard a beep. And the nurse was like, that's normal. And then we heard another beep, beep. Lo and behold, he popped back up. We call him Lazarus. His name was Elder. And we got another month and a half with our grandfather. The whole family was able to fly in from around the country and spend time with him. And so I'm here as a legislator and fortunate to have the opportunity to carry the bill. But I'm here as a grandson, hopefully soon to be a father, to spend the time bonding. When my wife and I got married last summer to her, to spend time with children as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Representative Flanagan, who's going to talk a little bit more about that aspect. So thank you again for coming.
Good morning. My name is Representative Peggy Flanagan, P-E-G-G-Y-F-L-A-N-A-G-A-N. Not Peggy Fleming, like I've gotten from a couple of folks as the new legislator. But I'm really excited to be here today with a couple of different hats on. Clearly, as a new legislator, I'm very excited about this bill. But I'm also excited about this bill as a child advocate, but most importantly, as a mom. And so, this is Siobhan, and Siobhan just turned 3. But Siobhan came to us after, frankly, a pretty rough pregnancy. I had hyperemesis, preeclampsia, was on bed rest for quite some time, and was really looking forward to the birth of my daughter. When Siobhan was born and put on my chest, and I looked at her and I said, I love you so much. And that I sort of always knew her. I was like, oh, there you are. And was able to focus on taking care of my baby, was able to focus on bonding, was able to focus on figuring out how to breastfeed, and really spend that time with my child and didn't have to worry about whether or not my family was going to earn a paycheck. Could really spend that time completely focused on my kiddo. And so many families in Minnesota do not have that same opportunity and benefit. And I think that's wrong, and it's un-Minnesotan. When we think about the health of both moms and the health of babies to be able to bond with their caregiver, either babies that are born to them or that are adopted, that's really critical, again, for the health of the relationship, but the health and development of our children. And so when we think about both from just the economic security perspective for families and their ability to care for loved ones, but also for the health and wellness of a child, this is the right thing to do. So I'm excited to be here with my colleagues and look forward to being able to move this through the legislature. Thank you.
So now we're going to take some questions. I just want to highlight that if you have particular questions about the policy or the study, we have Lisa Stratton here with Gender Justice who can help with some of those questions. So are there any questions?
Explain how this would be funded as far as how much people would pay. Is this required everybody pays? Explain a little bit more about that.
I'll bring up Lisa.
I think folks have already mentioned that.
Give us your last name, please.
Stratton, S-T-R-A-T-T-O-N, and I am LISA. concept behind this fits the funding model. The concept is we are all in this together. Everyone pays and everyone can benefit at those times, those few times in a lifetime when we each need it. So the contributions for the program come from both employers and employees. It will be funded 50% by employer contributions and employee contributions.
And how about state impact? What are you asking of the state?
State employees are covered as the bill is drafted, and so there will be a fiscal note requested.
And budgetary impact?
The program is intended to be self-funded and to be phased in over time. So there will be some initial startup funding requirements just to set up the system to do the tax collection of the contributions. And after that is set up, then it will be funded out of those contributions.
And what's the
What does it
criteria?
start at and what does it end at?
There isn't a particular budgetary number, I don't think, at this point.
You give a
What-
ballpark? How much it might cost?
I do not.
And not even ballpark if we could, and we'd love that, but how much would come out of a worker's paycheck?
That we have. That we can tell you. And in fact, that was the product of this very sophisticated study and analysis that was done by the Center on Women, Gender, and Public Policy at the U, and in collaboration with the Center for Women and Public Policy in IWPR in DC. They have a complicated model that they have used based on the other states that already have this program, so they can put in all of the parameters and all of the data about both usage, uptake, and rates, and paying in. So our program would be a 12-week model, so it'd be 12 week of paid leave, and it would pay a partial wage replacement. One thing that is unique about ours that we think will address some downsides in other states is it's a progressive system of payouts. So in other words, the lowest wage workers would get the highest percentage of their wage replaced, and that would be 80% as the bill is drafted. The amount of contribution is approximately, for a median worker in Minnesota, approximately $1.70 a week. That would be the employee contribution, and the same for employers for each employee.
And what's the median that you were basing this on? What is the Minnesota median wage?
It is around $1,000 a week. That's
44,000.
So 44.
oh, I was on weekly, so 44,000.
Okay, good. Can someone talk to us about how many people in Minnesota don't have this, don't have family leave, don't have sick leave, don't have any of this? How many people?
87% don't have
Yeah,
it.
almost everyone is what I was going to say. That's not very technical, but you're right. 13% of Minnesota employees currently have paid leave.
Currently do not have.
13% have.
13%
I
have.
think Doran should
87%
come
do
back.
not.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, 87% of Minnesotans do not have access to paid family leave.
And sick leave?
And sick leave, I'm not sure, does anyone know what the number is for sick leave?
60% have none, I believe.
60%.
So the majority of people in Minnesota don't have this, don't have the access to sick, when they're sick, when their kid
For
is sick,
sure, with
they have to
paid
go to
family
work.
leave.
Absolutely, that
Yeah.
is true. But this is different from, there have been bills and will be
I understand.
continuing from earned sick leave, which is intended for
Got it.
smaller
I'm just
episodic.
trying to put this
Yeah.
in
Yes,
the
but in
context
context,
How would this dovetail with federal policy and the federal leave?
very closely. Most of the bill is intended to pull from the working system of unpaid leave under the Federal Family and Medical Leave Act.
How would this legislation impact employees who may already have this benefit as part of their contract with their employer or collective bargaining agreements?
Employers who already offer this benefit, that it in such a way that it is equal to or better than what this state insurance program would provide, may be exempted, may seek an exemption from the program. They do need to pay in a really small percentage as an administrative fee for the ongoing cost of the program.
And if an employee does not want to participate?
They don't have to. It's like insurance. You apply if you would like to receive the benefit.
So just so I'm clear, I haven't read the bill, but this is not mandatory. that
It is mandatory
So
for
tell me
all
what-
employees and employers that are currently covered by the unemployment insurance system. which is
So
most.
I don't
So
understand
you
what
just said
Don
it was
just asked.
voluntary.
Okay, it is, I heard you ask, I may have been wrong, I heard you ask, do employees have to take the benefit?
Do the employers have to offer it?
Yes.
Or the employee does not have to take it?
Yes, but they have to pay in.
And every employer must offer it. Is that right?
Every employer covered by unemployment insurance, which is the vast, 90-some percent, 95%. And employees will pay in. An important element in it is to provide this coverage for self-employed folks who can elect to be part of it if they wish to. And employers who have this equal to or greater benefit may seek this exemption, but because there's an employee contribution here of 50%, the employees have to approve that by a majority of employees.
There should not be a fiscal impact then on the state budget, it sounds like.
After the startup cost, no. It'll be self-funded.
Okay.
Okay.
Back up. A majority of employees of a business must vote to do this?
No.
What are you talking about, the majority?
I was only confining that to the companies who elect to opt out of the system because they already offer an equal or better benefit.
Okay.
Is there a cap on how much time they can take off?
12
12 weeks.
12 weeks.
A year?
Yes. The only exception to that would be if there's a medically necessary leave for pregnancy, then the birth parent could then also take the bonding leave, which is kind of an important principle for gender equality. And the non-birth parent could also take the bonding leave, so the full 12 weeks.
To the legislators, maybe I missed them, I don't see Republicans standing up here. What are the chances this year, or is this kind of getting it out there so people who are back next year will be able to pass it, or are you optimistic?
Well, I'm optimistic, and maybe that's because it's my last legislative session and I really want it to pass. But I think as more legislators hear about the proposal, the modest cost it will have for employers and employees for a really tremendous benefit will gain widespread support.
Representative Metzger, what do you see in the House?
Well, right now I know that. Right now the public support is bipartisan. 55% of the Republican base supports this in polling, 85% of the general public. So I feel comfortable that this is an issue that'll move forward with hopefully an equivocal showing in the legislature. The bill, as all of you know, won't be ready till Thursday in its final form. So we haven't actually had a chance to go out and get people signed up on it. So once it's at that stage on Thursday, we'll have a lot better idea of who's interested. Sarah Anderson is already working on legislation that addresses this, although we haven't seen any specifics from her either.
How about some global context on this? I know it's in the press release, but the rest of the world treats this issue very differently than the United States.
Yeah, we're one of very few countries, industrialized countries, that doesn't offer this. And so Minnesota has a strong tradition of doing things right and getting things done. And I think that this is a discussion that's been moving nationwide and something that we'll address here in the legislature. And I think Minnesotans are ready for this change. We all know the day and age of getting a watch from your employer at the end of a career for a younger family like any of ours is not exactly there anymore. So it's time to talk about what people in my generation expect from their employers and what employers expect from their workers. And I think that this is something that mutually they've come together. I know, especially in New Jersey, where small businesses really led the charge on making sure that paid family leave was available for people.
I think, too, in the context of the presidential race, it has been discussed, and certainly it would be beneficial, or it would be better, perhaps, if this would be implemented on a federal level, but we don't see that happening anytime soon, and so it's really important that we try to move the ball forward. And a couple weeks ago, I was at a dinner with some CEOs of major Minnesota corporations along with some of my Senate colleagues. And we brought up this issue. And the CEOs from Minnesota said, you know, we already do this in some cases. So we talked about the opt-out provision. I talked about the opt-out provision that will be in the legislation. But they also said that it would be easier if it could be implemented nationwide. And certainly I agree with that. And I know that there are federal representatives who are pushing this, but we can't wait any longer. I mean, this is just taking too long to respond. I think, as Representative Metzger said, there's overwhelming public support for this. And in the presidential election, we see the angst that average Minnesotans and average Americans have for implementing strategies that will help them work. This is one of the top priorities that I think workers have, and that's why we need to get it done this year.
Which other states have already done this? New Jersey, California, and
New Jersey, California, and Rhode Island.
Would there be much administrative cost for businesses?
I imagine there would be some administrative costs for them to set this system up, but it's a payroll tax similar to unemployment insurance, so it's largely duplicative of that tax that they're already submitting, so it shouldn't be that difficult.
So once it's set up, would there be any administration by the business, or would that be handled by the?
Workers would submit their claims to the state, and then the state will pay the benefits. So it is relatively little administrative burden on the businesses. And that's why out of the costs of the tax that will be collected, there will be a small percentage that will go to pay for the ongoing administrative costs for the state to administer the program.
Well, what if there's ramifications for the employee to leave? Like, what if you know they're fired or they're let go or something happens like that?
Would that be you're talking about after they have
after
taken?
they leave, once they're gone and then they're replaced or they have trouble getting back in.
So there's two things that we kind of did when we were drafting the bill, and essentially we looked at the Family Medical Leave Act and tried to incorporate as much of the language so that we weren't being duplicative. So when this becomes a federal law, the state can easily transition. And because Minnesota doesn't have temporary disability insurance, we looked for the best model that we could, which was the unemployment insurance. And so in the Family Medical Leave Act, though, to answer your question there, you do have the job protection, and that is mirrored in the language that we're...
Does that count for part-time employees, though? Like people in retail, you know, waitresses, things like that? Does that act still apply to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Any idea how many people roughly a year would use this and how much the benefit would pay out?
So, no, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I was just going to say, there is a 200-page study that was written by Deb Fitzpatrick that, I mean, basically I know that you don't have time to read 200 pages. But there's lots of weeds we could get into, so we can reference people to that study and get even more of the like really technocratic details out based on what you're interested in. But if you have a quick answer to that. Or
Deb's
Deb.
right outside the door, and I think Deb surely does. But I think the report sounds daunting when you say 200 pages. But if you have a specific, policy issue or question, it's broken down into minutely into sections.
Yes.
How many people in Minnesota, is that in there?
Yes, Deb.
What was the question?
How many people in Minnesota would take advantage? Was the question? Would apply in your magical formula with the Institute for Women's Policy Research, by the way. I bungled their name at the beginning, so if anyone had that.
Sorry, let me.
Well, maybe while Deb's looking, I think there's an additional piece to answer your question, which is that in addition to the right to be returned to their job after taking the leave, there is a provision that protects employees from being retaliated against for using the leave, and that is enforceable.
Okay, let's just take a couple more questions. Do you have an answer, Deb?
So the estimates, it depends on about 135,000 people are estimated would be receiving program benefits in any given year.
In any year.
Could everyone hear that since you didn't have the microphone? She said 135,000 employees would likely use the benefit in any given year.
how much would that result in being paid out to employees? A rough idea of how much they would be collected?
Well, the benefit costs, so that's about $461 million in benefits that would go out in any given year for those 135,000 workers.
Thank you.
Okay, what, yeah.
Oh, is medical leave, paid medical leave, is that different than paid sick time? Is there a minimum number of days that you need to take to qualify as medical
Yes,
leave?
they are different. Sick leave is its own beast and is intended for the shorter term, or at least until it's used up. Here, the increment is basically something that takes 3 or more days or 3 or more treatments. So something that is of serious medical condition, and the definition is very similar to the existing federal Family Medical Leave Act.
And those are consecutive days?
They do not have to be consecutive.
Okay.
So, for example, if a family member is undergoing chemotherapy, I think that's one of the ones that everyone thinks of right away, that is very serious and is going to need more than 3 days of treatment, more than 7 days of leave for the employee, then that they could take it in incremental of 1 day.
So I think we should close so that people, but we have Deb available. You want to raise your hand for like post questions, and also Lisa will be available. I also want to note that Reverend Emily Goldwaite Fries is here to talk a little bit from a faith perspective. There she is. And then Christine from the AARP. Right here, is also going to be available to answer questions about our coalition and our organizing and who's coming together. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll be seeing you as we move this through this legislative session.